Afternoon, thank you, Walter. I'm going to speak for less than 15 minutes about the last mile, which is something that we've been grappling with at ByBox for, as Walter says, the last 10 years. Unfortunately, this picture is still too familiar to all of us. And the statement at the top there, I think, is a real truism, that over the last 10, 15 years, we have developed truly world-class retailing, real innovation, partly through technology innovation and all sorts of other things. But if we're marking our own homework on the delivery end of that, what real innovation have we really driven into that sector? So before I go on, can I just get a quick show of hands? It's always good to know your audience, actually, in terms of who is a carrier, who is actually involved in delivering stuff. Good stuff. Any retailers? Excellent. That's good. Software solutions? Okay, that's brilliant. So it's mainly, I guess, carriers and retailers, which I suppose isn't a surprise. So in terms of, if you think about things that have happened with online retailing, it's all very obvious. Obviously, the internet, handheld devices, any number of different ways in which you can buy stuff that you couldn't really do 20 years ago. But if you think about the distribution piece, and you're being honest, sending a text message when the driver's 20 minutes away from my house just pales into comparison. Is that the best that we can really do? There's been no real disruption in the delivery part of that whole solution for a very, very long time. So I want to spend, and I include us in that, by the way, so this isn't a kind of very pious presentation. We've tried very hard, but if you look at it honestly, why haven't we made the breakthroughs that I was so hopeful we'd make 10 years ago? So most of this is probably a bit of I'm Stuart, I'm an alcoholic, we're passionate about Dropbox, why haven't we made enough progress? And I want to be very honest with you about why I think that might be. So we haven't been sitting idle. We've been busy over the last 10 years. We have a network of over 25,000 Dropboxes in the UK, Ireland, France, Benelux, and so on. We turn over 35 million, but our customers are field engineers. Companies like Computer Centre and so on have a large field force of engineers. That's great, and I'm very proud of what we've achieved. That wasn't what we set out to do. When we started ByBox and bought a factory in France that makes, as it was then, electronic left luggage lockers, the vision was to create a network of banks of Dropboxes for consumer deliveries. So, if you're honest about that, have we done that? No, we've failed. So, a couple of weeks ago, Michael Conroy mentioned to me, actually, that Dropbox delivery for consumers is a bit like sex. When all is said and done, more is often said than done. So, if you go back 10 years, and in fact, Peter Rowlands, off the top of your head, when was the first time you started writing about companies like ByBox trying to address that problem? 2000, 2001? Yeah, so, a lot of words have been written, and a lot of business plans have been written, an awful lot of venture capital and private equity company has gone down the sort of the last mile drain. No end of companies from Brevo in the States, to eBox in Canada, to eShip4You in Israel, and loads in the UK as well. Very few have actually sort of delivered a sustainable business in using Dropboxes to solve the last mile for consumers. So if I was being defensive, I'd say, well, we have done some stuff. We've been working with La Poste in France for the last 2 or 3 years, providing electronic Dropboxes and software, the original, vision of the business, for La Poste to deliver consumer parcels, internet shopping in the Ile-de-France area, which is kind of Greater Paris. But again, that's great. I'm proud of that, but that's not in the UK. So, where's the progress in the UK? This time last year, Dan Turner, my co-founder, presented at the Meds conference and talked about the fact that we were launching a service called MyXBox, which we did launch, and we've had some traction through where you can essentially have any online purchase delivered to your local box. So we were very hopeful this time last year that would really get some traction, and we'd start to make some embryonic breakthroughs in that issue of the last mile. And I'll talk a bit about what's happened with that and where we're going next with it. But why so little progress really in the UK? Packstation in Germany, they have between 2,000 and 2,500 locations. La Poste, we have, it's not as many as that, but we have a network there. So why isn't it really taking off, or why hasn't it taken off in the UK? There are some things that seem compelling in the logic as to why it might be the case, but I don't believe them. I think they're myths. There aren't enough Dropboxes. I have to drive too far to get to my local box site. Really? We've got 350 drop sites in the UK. Business Direct has a similar number. There are lots of boxes out there. Debenhams has 158 stores, so we've got twice as many boxes as Debenhams. Well, people manage to shop at Debenhams. TK Maxx has 228 shops. We still have more than that, more than them. So I don't believe, if most carriers, hands up, and I know that somebody's going to put your hands on now, I'm going to call my bluff, but how many carriers have more than 350 depots? I know that Royal Mail will have in some ways, but most carriers have a lot less than that. So, if you've got a failed delivery and you have to go to a carrier's depot to pick it up on Saturday morning, our box will still be, or a box net will be significantly more convenient than that. So I don't believe the first myth. I don't feel comfortable with the technology. I mean, that can't be the case. Everyone here can use an ATM. They can use a washing machine. Left luggage lockers, we've been making those since 1986. And that's completely unattended. People just go and drop their luggage off and pick it up again later. That's exactly the same as using one of our boxes for delivery. So I don't believe, we've got 20,000 field engineers using our boxes. So they're consumers too. So I don't believe that actually. It's too easy to kind of make excuses for that to be the reason. Failed deliveries aren't that big a problem. The IMRG stats said last year, I think it was £513 million was the sort of scale of the failed delivery problem in the UK alone. So again, I don't believe that. And I think any retailer here, that thinks that as consumers we're totally happy with the delivery alternatives is kidding themselves. We're not. That earlier picture is a blinking nuisance. Being carded is one of the most disappointing things there is. So the reality, if I dispel those myths, why hasn't it really sort of gone on at the pace we hoped it would do back in 2000 and 2001? I think there is definitely an issue around marketing, branding and trust. And if we have time towards the end, I'll save it for the end because we might run out of time. But it's we had a very enlightening experience around marketing Christmas last year when we launched ByBox. And it was one of the clearest examples I've ever had of how difficult consumer marketing is. And the whole trust and the branding thing around, I've obviously lived with ByBox since 10 years ago, since we started it. So I trust us, I know what we can do. But if you've never heard of it, would you really trust something to turn up in a box that you ordered online? I can understand why that's a difficult sort of mental bridge to gap. The other thing that's more of a breakthrough for us over the last few months is that it's something that was triggered by some experience that we had with La Poste, which is you've got to make the habit change worth the effort. If you're going to try and get people to go through that bit around trusting you and sort of buying into what it is you're trying to do with them as a consumer, you've got to make it worth the effort. And that's an obvious thing to say. It's more complicated for us because it's worth the effort for who? And it's something that anyone that's tried to start a Dropbox type business, we've all grappled with this. The most simple question of all for any startup company is who is the customer? And it sounds obvious, you should really know who the customer is. Well, in our case, it could be any one of those three. It could be a retailer. We could be selling to a retailer to provide a delivery alternative for their customers. It could be a carrier. You can have a very efficient delivery model by delivering multiple things in the middle of the night to a bank of boxes. You can't deliver to my house in the middle of the night because I'm asleep, but you could deliver to our boxes. So, it could be compelling. But for both those, the retailer and the consumer, both of them, the only thing that really matters is cost and service. It will all come down to that. A carrier is not going to engage with us unless they can either reduce cost or increase service, or, of course, ideally both. And it's the same for the retailer. If we can help them to provide a more compelling proposition to help customers buy more, then they'll engage with us. But it's got to be worth their while. And obviously for consumers, clearly, if I'm going to engage with this, and it's something we learned very painfully actually over the last couple of years, is it's no good just integrating with a handful of online retailers. Because as a consumer, I might be able to buy my shirts on, shirt.com, but I then try to buy, some stuff for my kids on kids.com, and if I can't find the ByBox option, it's really disappointing. I won't change my habit. It might work once for that shirt or for that pair of shoes, but if I can't have all of my online shopping delivered through the box, obviously not perishables, not groceries, am I really going to change my habit? So that kind of opened up some thinking towards the beginning of this year, which was painful and quite cathartic for us actually. So it was a sort of realisation that it's really not about the box. So having spent 10 years banging on about how great electronic boxes can be in the supply chain, this realisation actually it's got nothing to do with the box. If you look at it dispassionately, it doesn't matter whether it's a box or the local spa store, the Collect Plus stuff. It doesn't really, all the box does is carve up thin air so that you can actually deliver to it, and it's helpful that it's in the middle of the night because there's less congestion and so on. But it's not about the box. All the box really does is connect something with something else. So the sort of traditional connection in that model is an online retailer with a consumer. Someone wants to buy something from an online retailer and wants the delivery to be arguably more convenient for a certain demographic of consumer than being carded. And we've spent almost all of our time in our consumer activity, not in the field service stuff obviously, but in all of the effort we put into the consumer piece, has all been around this particular scenario. We've been completely blinkered to anything else. It's all been about delivery. But if you think about, if you use the metaphor, and I'll spend some time now on this, the kind of the iPhone apps metaphor. Well, just using a phone, is an app. But it's not the only one, is it? The number of things you can do with an iPhone and other sort of devices is astonishing now. So what if we thought of the box as being just the kind of the conduit to connect things with other things? Then it starts to open up some more interesting thinking. And of course, all this is building towards that whole point of, if I'm going to change my habit and get engaged with a box network, well, I don't mean to sound very emotional now, but as part of my life, if I'm going to really go through that habit change, is delivery enough? Am I really going to make the effort to understand it and to register and to all those things just for delivery? I don't know. There's other things maybe that we should be doing that might open up more of that commitment from the customer. So we've spent quite a bit of time now. Those that know ByBox will know that we are absolutely obsessed with software development. It's my personal background, and we employ about 30 developers and testers and goodness knows whatever else, which is completely out of kilter. If you look at we employ about 204 people, so to have 15% of them or whatever in software development is unusual for a company of our size. We've spent a lot of the last 6 months thinking about the different apps that we can put on that box layer, if you like, to make people's lives easier, more convenient, and so on and so on. So one of them is that we'll be launching. I had to check on the train here. Actually, I couldn't remember whether we'd announced this yet, and actually we hadn't. But it's I'm not getting into any trouble by mentioning it. Send Social I know some people here will know, and I've been working with Hermes for a while, is basically address list delivery. And this is an interesting experience for me because it's basically 8 young lads, software entrepreneurs and other sorts of entrepreneurs, and they're all really young. I mean, they're sort of 18, 19, 20, it really makes me feel old. And they've basically, they've done something that we filed a patent for about 6 years ago, where you didn't have to have someone's address to deliver something to them. You could use their mobile phone number. So while we've been busy doing it in the kind of traditional way, file a patent, try and get some copyright and intellectual property protection, they just got on with it. And so if you want to send me a parcel, rather than having to worry what my home address is and whether I want to give you my home address and whether I'll be there or not, you just register with Send Social and you can use your phone number, your Twitter ID, your Facebook ID, and so on and so on. It's a really great fit with the box, because if I want to send, Peter Rowlands a parcel, I just need to know his phone number, and you do it through Send Social. They'll send me a barcode. I scan it into the box, and it goes to Peter's local box, and it's very, very elegant. So as a kind of that's obviously a delivery-related app, but it's not the traditional retail to consumer app. I don't want to overdo that metaphor, by the way, but it's a consumer to consumer way of doing it. It's a very, very elegant way of doing it. Another app is which we'll be launching later this year, is the iStore, which is essentially like a virtual loft. And one of the things, we really made a Horlicks of some marketing last year, where we leafleted, we spent, I think it was something like £3,000 leafleting around Cardiff to try and get people to register to use our Cardiff box for the online deliveries. And we got 2 people registered, which is very, very humbling. And it was also quite an expensive way to acquire customers, so we didn't do that again. But the 2 that registered with us live in flats. And this is so obvious. If you live in a flat, it's particularly difficult to get your online shopping delivered to you, because there's no kind of concept of by the garden gate. It's really difficult. So that led us on to thinking, hang on, what, if you're young, you live in a flat, you haven't got much space, you haven't got a loft. If you're 25 years old and you want to get rid of your summer wardrobe because you're going to get your winter stuff, what if you could just drop that in one of those big boxes, and we'll go and send it off to a storage company or one of our depots or someone else's storage place. And when you want it back again, just hop online and request it back. And so it's that sort of application of using a box again as a conduit. It's just a way in which you can connect somebody with another service provider. Another very obvious one is repair. And I don't know why, I've been convinced for years that this will work. And we did some focus groups, which are very unlike us. We usually just have a crack at something and learn sort of empirically rather than by applying sort of too much science around it. And out of the focus groups, one of the things that came out, and it was particularly with ladies actually, was could you do shoe repairs? Could I drop my shoes into a box and then have it returned back to a service provider? And that to me is a really good example actually of that marketing, branding, trust thing. I'm not a marketer, you know, by trade I'm a software developer, so I need to be careful. I don't know very much about marketing really, but I know enough to know that if I said, you know, to you as an example, would you trust me to fix your shoes? Would you trust ByBox as a brand? You'd be nuts to trust us. I mean, what do we know about Now, I could hire a cobbler, and I could put that cobbler with a green hat and a hammer in our hub to repair ladies' shoes. But would you really trust me? If I said we've partnered with Timpsons, and Timpsons, we've got a Timpsons franchise in our hub in Coventry, and you can put the shoes in the box. Well, you know, we're perfectly capable of getting something from a box back to our hub. You know, we're good at that. And then our little cobbler will repair it, and that's like the tooth fairy for shoes. And then magically, though, your repaired shoes come back. You might trust that because you trust Timpsons. You trust us to do the logistics, and Timpsons to actually do the shoe repair. So, same with laptops. You know, you might not trust us to fix a laptop for you, but you might trust RDC from Computer Centre to fix your laptop for you. So, again, it's not really about the box. It's about trying to connect the consumer with a service provider. So a kind of a sort of a bigger example of this is some work that we did with La Poste last year, which is if you try to wrap a lot of that service provision into one unit, you could end up with something like this, which we've branded the Box Office, where it's kind of a multifunction device. And there are others like this, but I'm not trying to misrepresent this as being, you know, we're the only people that have thought of this. There are other people that do this sort of thing as well. But it's got things like the big hatch over there is for returns, so you don't have to just use a door. You can put the thing, it's like a return hopper, then it will just drop down into another area of the unit. That's a weighing and dispatching thing here, so it can be the first mile to actually inject parcels into a network. In fact, there's all sorts of other things that our factory put together in weighing and volumizing, single payment kiosk, stamp printing, and so on and so on. And actually, you'll probably think this is actually true. I'm still quite surprised we're doing this, but we one of the things that this goes backwards as well. That if you look at the columns, these doors come in columns on the far right. We've just manufactured a batch of columns where the whole thing is one door, and it's for dry cleaning, and there's a little space for a little hook for a hanger at the top. So I can't talk about that without laughing, because I have no idea what will happen with it. I don't know how successful it will be, but we have done it, and we're doing some of this stuff in France. And again, that's just connecting, you know, the consumer with a service provider, in that case, dry cleaning. So. So, you know, arguably, without wanting to sort of overstretch Michael Conroy's quote, which he'll deny saying to me, but we all know that he would have said something like that. You know, he's probably right. You know, the delivery box for consumers, you know, is like sex. You shouldn't be doing it on your own, and collaboration is absolutely key. And if that's one thing we've learned over the last few months, it's not about the box. It is all about connecting consumers with other service providers through the box. So, you know, in closing, if you want to collaborate with us to create an app, you know, by all means, get in touch. It would be. I'm personally a big fan of collaboration. I think those that collaborate will always beat those that don't. So, you know, get in touch. Thanks very much.